Welcome to the Harvesting Wisdom podcast. Together we explore the vast landscapes of life, delving into the rich soil of experiences, sowing the seeds of curiosity, and harvesting the profound wisdom that each episode unfolds. Welcome back to another episode of Harvesting Wisdom. I'm your host, Mike McMahon. Today I have my guests are Jan Rem and Jordan Krieg. I think I pronounced Krieg correctly. I usually mess up a name or two on every podcast, but looks like I got it. Our mission at Harvesting Wisdom of our podcast is to basically introduce people to their individual stories and to organizations' stories. And it's all part of a sustainable planet, regenerative agriculture, and land management. We think those are the cornerstones of a healthier planet. And I welcome both of you, my guests, Jan and Jordan. Hello, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having us. We are a mother and son team here, just so that you know.
Your family, okay. So I'm going to start with Jan. Give me just a brief life history, a quick bio on yourself.
Well, I will say I'm from an older generation to the point where things were a bit different when I was younger. But sustainability was always part of my life, as far as, for instance, food waste. I was raised where wasting food was absolutely not acceptable. And then becoming a single mom, raising two kids on a shoestring budget, that also became very important to be resourceful and very much into recycling from way before it was, a trend, I should say. Hopefully wasn't ever the trend, but so fast forward, my love is gardening. I love to sew, so basically integrated this great idea that was passed down by my grandmother in another form. But our zippered linen produce bags are what our mission is to reduce waste.
Now, are you from the East Coast, West Coast? Have you moved around?
Ojai, California, born and raised. Actually, 4 generations in Ojai. It's where Jordan was raised.
Okay.
And it's a small town, Southern California. And it was a very interesting upbringing because of being in such a small town. Everyone knew everyone.
Yeah. And, everybody in the rest of the country, we all look at California as the trendsetters and the people who are living in paradise and that sort of thing. Of course, no matter where you are, that's where you are. So, we all have our own issues or problems or whatever struggles. So we don't, you could be living in paradise, but you don't see it that way necessarily, right? But
well, actually, Ojai is called Shangri-La. It was in the movies in Lost Horizon back in the 40s.
No kidding.
And Ojai is a very unique town because it's surrounded by mountains. It's actually a nest.
And it's how far is that from LA? I know I've driven through it. It's not
Jordan
that far,
lives in LA, so he can be a better answer to that one.
Yeah. So Jordan, tell me a little about, I know now who your mom is, and I know you're from Ojai, California, and that's where you're living. So, but fill in the other gaps.
Lots of gaps to fill in. So I moved to Los Angeles 11 years ago, and about 3 years after I moved to LA, my mom came up with this pretty genius idea. And it was like the very beginning of Ambrosia. And after a lot of personal tests in what kind of linen to use, and actually, can we start this all over?
Well, there's no stop or no end. We're just talking. Cool. Yeah. So,
can you then prompt me with the question?
Sure. I'm just looking for your personal bio. Where did you where did you grow up? Where did you go to school? What are the motivations in your life and your inspirations, and what got you to? I don't even know the day of the week right now. Today is Wednesday. What got you to Wednesday, June, whatever day it is, 2024 or whatever it is?
That's it. That's a big help. Okay. All right. So, man, what got me here today? I've always spent time in the garden. I was raised by my mom, who was a landscaper herself for Kenny Loggins back in the day.
Okay.
She raised me really valuing everything that came from the dirt. And then on top of that, my dad was a trained chef with Johnson Wales,
Oh,
CIA.
wow. Okay. You got it both sides of it then, of the food spectrum.
So really early, I kind of had an appreciation for nature, for good food, for the kind of culture around food. But I found myself more and more wanting to get into the garden. And when my mom and dad divorced at 12, my mom had no time to garden anymore because she had to work.
Hmm.
She spent, all of her time working 3 jobs, and so I took it upon myself to plant a vegetable garden.
Oh,
And it was
great.
I
He
really
did.
fell in
Yeah.
love with the process of growing my own food, and then I rediscovered this love during COVID, and during that process, I also had an opportunity to grow my mom's company and do a little bit of capital raise and completely change what was kind of like this farmers market inspired, out of the back of a Subaru kind of company, into something that's starting to resemble a national e-com brand.
Yeah. So you're into the gardening, which I think is like the basis for everything, right? Because I'm a soil guy, and I think that if that's your starting point, I mean, talk about being grounded, right? So, and especially what that's done is that's motivated you. You guys saw a gap someplace that you felt that you could fill, and that's taken you where you are. And Jan, I mean, you're saying you're a different generation, but I don't think you're even as old as I am. But um, what I like is that you talk about there was never wasted food. I was in a family of 7, and there was never waste. There wasn't ever enough food, And if you got to the table late, you didn't eat. But it was a different time. There wasn't a lot of. We didn't have the restaurant culture that we have now. We didn't. I basically never went to restaurants, and my father was an avid gardener, and so I understand the concept, and everything we had we reused. There was never. I wish my
Absolutely.
parents. I wish they threw away a little more than they did, but they basically just would do everything with it. But I think to a degree, we've lost that. Those are the real values of a conservative. And that word, like all other, became a political word, and it got kind of bastardized. We don't have a conservative party in this country anymore. We don't. People have taken that word, but that's. We don't think of things from that standpoint, especially from the way the government is, and we all buy throwaway clothes and foods that are not sustainably grown. People don't know where their food came from because we're that one more generation removed from people who actually gardened, right? So, anyway, there you guys are, and you started Ambrosia Produce Bags, right? So, when did this idea hit? Was that right in COVID, right at the beginning?
No, actually, it reaches all the way back to 2000. I'm going to say 13ish.
Okay.
Um, as I said, it's accumulation of life experiences and time, because from being a child, then I found myself dumpster diving in the Yukon Territory to feed teams of sled dogs.
Wow.
Um, and it was, so
Well,
that would have been,
you did not mention that in your bio.
I
So,
know, I
so,
know, but
so
it's
you're,
worth, it is kind of the pivoting point of uh, the aha, because the amount of food, so that would have been 1973, I'm going to say,
okay.
1972. Um, no, fast forward a little bit further, 1975. So it was actually appalling. There was so much food day after day. And we had permission, to go in and dive into these dumpsters and pick up perfectly good food. Um,
Sure.
you know, what do they call it? Misfit produce, and we made mush for dogs. But so that was super impactful. And then working 20 years in the restaurant industry, seeing the balance between storage and food waste was just always in your face, basically, when you're working back, in the back
Sure.
house. Um, Again, being a single mom, but fast forwarding, it was basically finding myself always in the garden, grounding myself, and I had a big harvest of greens and thought, okay, so now storage. What am I going to do here? For years, used my grandmother's technique of wrapping all of our produce, wet produce, in linen tea towels that were damp, and you put them in the refrigerator.
Ah,
That
so
was just a
linen.
common thing for us to
Yeah, yeah.
see.
Okay.
So I was kind of tired of that process, and I was in that state of, I'm a little bit spoiled now, and even though really did not like the whole plastic bag movement, I wanted a Ziploc bag, and I wanted to contain it. So
Mm-hmm.
I had the sewing machine, I had the linen, I had the zippers, because that is a love of my background, and I put my first produce bag together. But the fun story is, and I like telling this story to people, is it started about 3 days after I put my greens and my basil in the refrigerator in my new bag and had it out. And my neighbor was walking across or down the street, and I could see her out the window. And I ran out and I said, Marie Lynn, check this out, my new produce bag. And this is 3 days. And so it became kind of a fun game. Every day I'd open my bag, wait for her to go by, and I'd run out and go, this is day 5. And every day. So day 12 was my aha day, where she finally said, girlfriend, you got something here. You've got to share this with the world. And I went, yeah, right. And
Yeah.
this is what we're doing.
So
So
yeah,
that was,
isn't it amazing how all these experiences that you probably didn't even enjoy at the time, right? Yet some of these, the hardship as a kid, and the gardening, which is you're out in the sun, you're dealing with
yeah,
weeds, and but how it all kind of comes together, and it gives you that wisdom. Sometimes, wisdom happens to someone when they're 12 years old, and sometimes it happens to us toward the end, but it never, I mean, that is the kind of the pursuit that we all have. And I'm looking at what you've done. We do some things so in Africa, we've brought in a solar dryer, and we dry all the, because when you're growing a product, right, like mango season down in Jamaica and in Africa, and now all of a sudden you have like way more mangoes than you could possibly eat, and people eat a ton, but then a bunch get wasted because in Africa there's not a consistent source of electricity, and or you can't afford to keep things refrigerated. So it puts you in a place where you got to jar it, can it, or and in this particular case, in the schools now, they are tray by tray. They're putting in dried fruits, dried vegetables, and they're good for a solid year. Now we don't have. They're storing them just basically in paper towels, but the shelf life is for an entire year. And it'd be great if I had some Ambrosia Bags over there, because I could literally store it all right in there, because linen is breathable. It'll take on that moisture. So it's anybody who's ever gardened knows the first thing you do when you're pulling up a plant off the vine is some plants you wash, some plants you don't wash, but either way you get them out of the heat, and then you if you need to wash them, you do so. But then you need to dry them. So a lot of times we put them on mesh tables and we'll put a fan on them or whatever. Then you got that whole issue of storage. But you just mentioned, plastic, and it's interesting because we are involved with hemp, and there's a new concept of using hemp in plastics, and I think they've already figured it out that they can put that in, and now like a plastic water bottle will biodegrade in the ocean within a month. So, we're seeing, but how much damage in the short time, because I grew up, there were no such thing as water bottles. And the idea, when I first saw that there was water for sale in a grocery store, I just laughed, and I was like, oh my God, who on earth would buy water? You can get it out of your tap. Why would you possibly? I thought it was the biggest idiot, stupid thing I'd ever seen. Of course, billion-dollar industry later. And the problem now is you go worldwide and you got all these plastics and if it's not a single-use plastic, I don't have a big problem with it. Plastics are part of furniture and housing and automotive and everything else, so they're just another product. But when you've got a single use, somebody opens up that bottle, they may not even drink the water, and then they throw it, and there's no place for it to go. It truly, the only way to get rid of it is to incinerate it, and it's not really entirely. Some of them have that little triangle on them, but the reality is you're not really recycling those. So anyway, you come up with this concept. Now, how did you source the linen, and how did you do? Or who was the designer? Because I know your bags aren't just regular bags; they're pieces of art, right? So tell me about that.
So the research was it's actually. I did some traveling, but back in the day when I gave my first bag away to friends and family, I did give one to my son, and because he loves cooking, he really got it from day one. And in fact, he has one of the original bags. I think he still uses 8 years later. So, but
That's great.
He said to me, Mom, if you're really serious about this, you really need to take a deep dive. You need to know how to talk about linen and flax and the whole story. So I really
Sure.
took him serious and I took the deep dive. I took what's called a WEAVE program. It's a women's economical ventures for women trying to start a business. And I read and read and read. I just really dove right into. I love the history of linen. It is amazing. I have volumes this thick of
Yeah.
flax linen. It's 30,000 years old. They
Sure.
wrapped, pharaohs in them that they still find. So, uh, so I went to Europe. I felt like I needed hands-on. So back in the day, you didn't have as much search, and there was very little on the internet that I could find linen mills in Europe. And I happened to find one. Interesting enough, the last name was Grieg, and it was the oldest linen mill in Scotland. So
No
I thought,
kidding.
got to go. And he gave me an invite. And it happened my friends were going to Scotland to stay for a week and then over to Holland. And I thought, yay, I'm going with you. So I did. And it was just fascinating. It's all digital now, but from that point, then we went on to Europe and to Holland and Belgium, and I toured many linen mills there, and was really able to really grok the whole idea of flax and how it's turned into linen. So that's kind of where it started was that part, scratching the surface. And then I came home and decided to just create a bag, and it was very different than what we have now. It was actually out of a printed linen, and I had different ideas. And the more I started to simplify it, I realized that I wanted it as natural as possible, but yet it needed to have its own call. So the colored zippers was basically my idea of making it different. So it is just made out of raw flax linen, but there are two different types of bags. And the second one came later. It was our lighter weight linen that was used for basically all vegetables, including lettuce. And then that was the hydrating bag, because as you mentioned, linen has the ability to absorb 3 times its weight of water before it even feels wet. So it
Right.
can really absorb and hold water. One of the only fibers that can actually do that. It's very long, hollow polymers that create that ability. So from that point, I went to market. My first market was the Ojai Farmers Market in my hometown. I was scared to death. I thought no one's going to get this. You know, what am I doing? I'm trying to talk myself out of it, and it was pretty astonishing how receptive people were,
Sure.
and they weren't actually looking for it because I didn't know what they were actually needing, but they were tired of wasting produce, and it was all the time. People would come up and go, "Oh my gosh, I feel like I've needed this forever." So this is, we've kind of created this fun movement in our own right that, people are actually finding something that they actually need that they didn't even know they were looking for.
Yeah.
So
Isn't it crazy how we start on a very small level, like your backyard, and Jordan's doing the garden, and you have, when you were growing up, you learned how to sew, and then you come up with the idea from your grandmother of the linen, but then you go worldwide. You go to Europe, where linen is a major product. It still is, and not like unlike the U.S., we didn't lose a lot of our. We've lost a lot of our textile manufacturing in the U.S. We seem to have subcontracted everything to everywhere in the world and don't seem to do a lot on our own anymore. But you went all the way over there. You go to France, and they're always they've been around forever and have figured out how to protect, completely innovate and perfect what they do. And then you go through Holland. Of course, Holland are probably some of the best innovators in agriculture with all their machinery. And the whole country, for instance, was a swamp, and now they figured it all out. They're another amazing group. But you take all that, you take it home, you go to L.A., which is a big market, and you figure that out. And so before I'm going to get back to that with you in a minute, but now Jordan, you were in gardening. You knew your mom. You weren't a seamstress yourself, but
No.
you did other things, and then you start getting involved with this. So what do you do besides giving positive critique to your mom on the things she did? What exactly are you doing with the company?
Thank you, Mike. So actually, really fast. Previous to this, I'm a sommelier, fine
Ah,
wine, third level. I used to build brands for export to China, and so I knew the Asian market quite well, and really just understood the sales process for international wine sales from start to finish.
wow.
Um,
Okay.
till I realized that I don't want to make alcohol my entire life. And based on that, I kind of looked around at opportunities, and at that time it was COVID. My mom was looking for help in her company, and I knew at the bottom of my heart that she probably did not have enough in her bank account to last her for the rest of her life. And it felt like kind of this almost magical occasion to rise up to the occasion, if you will, and team up with her to make this big dream and this product into something that is just like so much bigger than us.
Yeah. Now, I'm a sommelier, but not a level 3. I do everything to the point where it requires a lot of work, right?
Yeah.
So, if anybody's gone through the sommelier training, because I'm a wino and I've had lots of wine my whole life, and when I travel, I go to vineyards and I go to wineries and I read the books on them and that kind of thing, and I drink, a fair or have over my lifespan and paired it with foods and everything else. So it was weird. I thought I had signed up for a sommelier class, but evidently I didn't even do that right. I didn't click the purchase button. And I show up at the class anyway, and they looked at me and they're like, "You're not on the list. You didn't sign up." And I was like, "Oh, I'm pretty sure I did." "No, you didn't." Fortunately, one person pulled out because they told me, "Oh, you got to sign up for this a year in advance." And I'm in, a pair of jeans and a sweater. Everybody else is wearing, suit and tie and dresses and high heels and makeup. And okay, I'm the one guy who doesn't fit in. For many reasons, right? But what was weird is I had enough experience, and I had made wine with my dad. Well, it was a good vinegar that he made when I grew up. So I had a little bit of experience with that, and then I started growing grapes because clients needed them made and that kind of thing. But so I basically just passed that test without anything, right? And then I found out, hey, they give you a book, that you're supposed to study. But I looked at that and I know what a master. I mean, there's way more NFL or NBA superstars than there are master sommeliers. Master sommelier, there's only a few of them, and you're like one step away. So, but you have to almost go insane to get to that level, right? So I don't know if you'll follow back into that insanity and take that last step or not. What do you think?
Honestly, I think growing a company with your 70-year-old mom is crazy enough. I don't think I need to go back.
There you go. Well, but here's the thing. It's interesting because it's an amazing commodity as well, wine, right? It's been grown all over the world and then bottled, and it's over these last 200 years, the technology, the science is just making better and better grapes, and the idea of transporting it and everything else. So, but then it all has to be packaged, bottled, it has to be marketed, and you were in that space. So those experiences gave you that expertise to actually come in and scale up what your mom was doing, right?
Well, I mean, unfortunately, Mike, the viability of wine is less than it used to be. There's unfortunately a huge glut in Australia right now. There's a massive glut in California because the Chinese market is not taking wine that it was otherwise.
Ah, okay.
It's becoming harder and harder for wine vine growers to actually turn a really generous profit. And fortunately, the market for wine is shrinking more. And the combination of that really brought me some clarity, and it made me want to start looking at sustainability in a different way.
Ah,
And
okay.
being hands-on about sustainability. And being that my mom always taught my sister and I to not waste our food, to eat everything on the plate. And even when we grew things in the garden that I didn't necessarily like eating, I still was compelled to eat those things. And when my mom brought Ambrosia Bag to me, it felt like such an obvious and just like serendipitous invention product for the market. And it took me 6 years to really gain up the courage to team up with her and to make it into what it is and what I aspire it to be tomorrow.
So let's talk about, and I'll ask you this question, Jordan. It's really 2013 is when the first inception of the ideas, and then there was a lot more research and development, and then you launched something pre or during COVID. Now that's actually a great time to launch something, but it's also a pretty scary time. You don't know what the world's got going on, but that's only 4 years ago. So tell me about this journey since then. And then we talked a little about the bag, and I'm going to ask you this, Jan, but What are the different bags you have, and what are their uses besides just storing a fresh vegetable when you pull it out of your garden? So, but tell me how you scaled it, Jordan.
I mean, in truth, Mike, it's been a 2.5 year journey in how to stare at a bunch of problems for way too long and not know how to react, and then about 9 months of finding the path and actually making up for all of the lost time that I had previously.
Yeah. So it's usually about finding people who you believe in, or who believe in you, that you can work with. Usually, that's how always this whole thing works, right? Finding like-minded people.
I found myself when I was caused in fear wearing all of the hats and not knowing when to take off the hat, who to give that hat to, and how to feel about it. And it wasn't until I started providing trust in contractors and staff and started putting our hard-earned resources into paid marketing, and then everything changed. And then we developed a really cohesive team, fantastic packaging, a really well-performing website, and it just started getting stronger and stronger. And the stronger it got, the more people cared to learn about it. And I think that's probably why we're on this show today.
So where are the buyers,
Yeah.
and what is the platform you have? Are you using a third-party internet like an Amazon, or are you selling directly into markets? I mean, where are you selling it on the planet, and who are those? What does that platform look like?
Sure. I mean, the platform originally was a farmer's market builder, right? It
Okay.
was small. That scale was pretty small. And now our biggest platform is our e-commerce site. So if you visit www.ambrosiaproducebag.com, you can go to our site. You can see our offerings. We have 5 different offerings right now and more to come. Or we have a growing network of retailers as well throughout the United States. We don't have any retailers outside the country yet, but very open to it in time. And on fairs. So if you own a store yourself, an eco retail shop, a health food store, a cool craft store, whatever be it, if you're a store owner, you can also check us out on fair.com.
Okay, great. Now, Jan, who's using these bags, and what are they using them for? And you said you had a first bag, a second bag. You have several bags, but what is the purpose of each and every one, and who do you see as your user group?
That's an interesting question, because when I first started, I hired my friend to help me with the design of packaging, and he came from a background of advertising. He used to do all the graphics for Harley Davidson, so it was a bit different than a bag, but we worked together, and he sat me down one day and he said, um, who's your avatar? And I'm thinking, what the heck? What do you mean, who's my
Mm-hmm.
avatar? Who's your avatar? Well, I said, well, women. Well, okay, how old are they? And I said, well, it's really, but it's everybody. He said, no, 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 you have to bring it all in, and it has to
Sure.
be basically. So it was decided then, because of, and I was so new to the market, um, that it was a woman in her 40s to 60s.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Children maybe already left the home, and that would be that focus. Fast forward, especially when Jordan jumped on board, he was his big drive to change that avatar and broaden the avatar, which is what I wanted to do originally, but
To have more
wasn't,
avatars, more advertised.
exactly. We
Right
can
on.
have one more, right? Two more, it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't. Um, so now we see the trend really broadening. More men, even though still it is, the needle towards women, um, but of all ages. it's just so cool. And I even have to say, when I'm at farmers markets, what we just love still doing at our local, I have young kids that'll come up and go, Mom, check this out. It's just, it thrills me, because they can see they have a different mind thought. So as far as the bags go, I started with 6 bags, I should say 6 colored zippers, but 1 bag. And it was kind of a nightmare having so many colored zippers. And I thought, maybe I need to give this some more persuasiveness to consumer um, interest. So I decided to create different types of bags with then those colored zippers. And so it was first just the what we would call the moist bag, and it's a lighter weight linen, purposely to use, putting all your vegetables in wet, zipping it, put it in the produce drawer, and then the magic all begins, because the bag will actually absorb all that water from your wet veggies and stay hydrated. And linen comes with a whole list of beneficial properties, of which are the air permeability, the hygroscopic, ability to absorb, but also the antibacterial, which it does not mold. Like if you had wet cotton in your refrigerator,
Hmm.
textile, it would mold in 5 to 7 days. Linen won't do that. Linen is actually, flax itself is actually a vegetable fiber, so it's very symbiotic. The symbiosis is so cool that a vegetable fiber is protecting and preserving a vegetable. So from that point, I started to uh, I I don't know exactly how I came across doing mushrooms, but I use a lot of mushrooms and started to creating an idea of doing a mushroom bag and a berry bag, and that became our dry bag, which is meant to be dry and meant to be on the refrigerator shelf. And because of one of the major properties of linen being hygroscopic, in how it works for the other 2 bags, the veggie and the herb or the leafy green bag, it's giving back moisture. So that keeps everything alive. It almost creates a micro, or what did you call it, Jordan? A biosphere inside.
Right. Well, the
Um,
refrigerator dehydrates, so you've got that
we're giving back.
that
Yeah, we're keeping it alive through hydration. Whereas it's the opposite with the dry bags, because of the properties of linen. Once you put your mushrooms or your berries in, it's actually going to draw the moisture off the surface, which inhibits mold. I mean, slime off of mushrooms literally never throw mushrooms away. They will just slowly dehydrate, and it's a real slow
amazing.
process. So you can still use your mushrooms up to 2 weeks. And then berries, it will, if you have very fresh, even organic berries, they'll last up to 2 weeks. Bag, the store bought, it's tricky, because we don't know how old they are and how they've been
Right,
handled.
right. But if I'm a buyer, I'm a gardener, right? And I have gardens that we install all over the place. Obviously, it's a great product for me. But let's say I don't have a garden. I'm just uh, someone who works in an office in a city somewhere. I still go to a grocery store. Do I buy these bags to go grocery shopping?
Well, that's a good
Or,
question.
okay, go ahead.
It started out that way because I wanted to get rid of the pull down single plastic bags.
Uh huh.
But the more I kept using the bags, I realized, gee, they were full, and now I couldn't really take them. I even had a tear tag on the line on the tag, and it evolved into storage only. So the carry to market, we do have customers all over that will bring their bag to the market or to the farmer's market and fill them and take them and put them back in the refrigerator. But technically, they are they are a storage system for the refrigerator.
So if I go to the grocery store and I get berries, you have a berry bag. If I
Correct.
get leafy greens, lettuce, kale, whatever, you have a bag for that.
Correct.
I'm a mushroom guy, so I would go in and buy mushrooms and I'd put those in their own bag. And when I got home, I could either wash everything and then dry it slightly or put it right into this bag and then put it into the refrigerator. So it becomes not just a carry bag at the grocery store, which, by the way, does reduce all that packaging that the grocery store has, less stuff into the into the landfill. But now I have the ability to put it in someplace in the refrigerator, and all of us have that issue, right? We have, you have a cheese drawer, a meat drawer, you have this, you have all these different vegetables that you have in there, and each one really requires its own way of storing, right? Bell peppers, mushrooms, a lot of them have that slimy stuff on them. Some things will get a bacteria buildup or a mold on them. So this is a great product for that. So you've basically solved two problems with the bag.
Right. The large bag actually was meant for most all vegetables that you would store in the refrigerator. The only
Okay.
thing you're not putting in that bag would be potatoes, yams, onions, garlic, and tomatoes. Technically, you're not in because they'll lose their flavor due to the change of starch to sugar to starch.
Right.
Um, so those will be stored in the crisper drawer because you want to protect it from the fan in the refrigerator because you want it to stay moist at all times.
Hmm.
Whereas the dry bag is for the shelf.
Now, I'm sure you have all those instructions on your website. Do you have anything that comes with the bag itself, like a little, print on it, that says leafy greens, or another one that says mushrooms, or another one that says berries? Is that how you label it so that people are, because I would grab the wrong bag and put bread in it or
That's
something,
a really good question. Yes, we've taken the time and the efforts to create beautiful woven labels. They're sewn on each side of the bag. And one side will say ambrosia, the other side will say vegetables, and they'll have a moist and verbiage indicator. And then the dry bags and then you have leafy green, mushroom, and berry. So it is an indicator. And I'm excited to show you our new set box that we just picked up today. That
Ah.
is, whoops, where are we at? There we go.
And
Right.
believe it or not, we ordered those bags. They did not come in today, like we thought they were actually supposed to
Oh,
come in Monday. But I will have them on this podcast when they come in the next day or two. So I'll kind of show them, and I'll, you know, get rough with them and everything else and show people how they all work. But the question then would be, you're always changing or perfecting or modifying the bags to make sense based on feedback. Where do you see this going long term? And what I'd like to do is I'm going to connect you guys with my friend Larry, who's in LA, and he's head of the Hemp Association for the U.S., and there's hemp products. So hemp, by the way, is very similar to linen.
very much so.
It's a very similar. It's the same vegetable fiber and the whole thing. And American hemp now is something we want to promote because it uses less water. It's a great plant. It goes 2.5 meters deep, so it breaks up, remediates soil. It's got a big uptake of metals and all kinds of different things in the soil. So a great plant in rotation with cottons, and it can be used in a blend. So I'm gonna get you guys a little bit of hemp so you can play around with that. Let me ask you this question: where are you manufacturing that? Are you manufacturing overseas, or are you manufacturing here locally?
Can I take that, Mama?
You
Sure.
sure can.
All right, cool. So we have manufactured in California this entire time, from start to finish. Unfortunately, the linen industry was all but wiped out in the United States. I think the
Yeah.
last linen mill last linen mill in all of northern America is in Nova Scotia. It's a
Mm.
tiny operation. Everything else is happening in Europe and Russia. In our case, our linen's coming from
Yeah.
Belgium mostly, a little from France as well. But in terms of manufacturing, our first manufacturer we still use We work really closely with them. They're in Ventura, California. They were actually the first cutter sewer of Patagonia back in the day, back when Patagonia actually still manufactured in the United States.
Uh-huh.
And because we are growing at the pace that we are, but have only love for our first manufacturing partners, we've also increased production here in Los Angeles, about 8 minutes away from my house.
So
And
you're
that
still in California, okay?
100%, and we have no plans to leave that. I think it's part of our ethos and part of our core values that we just refuse to give up.
You know, it's crazy to me. You know, we listen to all the rhetoric and we hear about defense spending and homeland security. And to me, national security has to do with having base industry, right? So a strong base agriculture, a textile industry. And I see this worldwide. When I'm in Africa, for instance, because they're flooded with Asian products that are made of synthetics, which aren't the best things for the environment to begin with, but they're so cheap that they've undermined the textile industry in those countries. And you can't buy clothes that were actually made or things that were made there. And we've seen that same thing happen in the States. You know, we've become brokers of everything, not producers of anything. And I think when we went through like COVID, we could see that, right? We couldn't even make masks to put on people. So that's another one of my little pet peeves. I won't take you down that road. But I love to see what you guys are doing. It's great. And I do end up going to California because I'm doing projects. We're growing hemp in the Fresno area, and I've got partners doing things over there. So I'd love to, on a trip to California, come and drop by you guys and invite myself in to chat with you. And I'll start using that. We have our nonprofit where we're putting in gardens all over Arizona for now, and also in Africa. So I'll get myself a supply of your bags. I'd love to have you guys partner with that, with what we're doing. Come to Africa with me and see how that part of the world is. You know, I'd love to invite you guys to that. But I'll sign off now. Sorry for our early technical issues getting you on board, but I appreciate my guests today, Jan Rem and Jordan Krieg. I think I got the names right. You know, after an hour of trying. So I appreciate you guys, what you're doing. Love your story, and what you're producing is a major need for it, and we'll definitely stay in touch.
It was such a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I think you did put a plug in for your website, but I'm going to show your bag when it arrives, and I'll splice that into this website, into this podcast, excuse me. So.
And Mike, we'd love to send you more bags as well for your next trip to Africa.
All right, appreciate it. Okay, guys.
Thanks so much.
Enjoy your day. Bye.
Thank you for joining the Harvesting Wisdom podcast. Click subscribe and like for ongoing insightful conversations. Explore our webpage for show notes and additional resources. Visit our guests' webpage for deeper insights. Your engagement is the foundation of our journey, and until next time, keep pursuing wisdom.